You gonna take the first shift, BB? Or do you want me to drive? You want me to drive? You don't have to let me in then. You ready to hit the road? You ready to hit the road? All right. You gonna sit down? Or you gonna go on your bed? You gonna sit there? You gonna sit there? All right. Yeah, we're gonna go out on the road a little bit, Missy. Hey everybody. B and I are just waiting to get in. What do you think, Missy? We're just waiting to get in. We're at the Pittston terminal. We're waiting to get into inbound here, and then probably get the truck washed. Try to get drop this trailer for a little bit. Try to get the truck in the shop to get the APU work done. So, what do you think of that plan, Missy? Yeah, she likes sitting in the sun. It's pretty chilly up here today. It's like 30. It's right around freezing. So, anyway, yeah, we'll see what we can get done here. We'll be back in a minute. Hey everybody, welcome back. So B and I found a parking spot here in Pittston, which is no mean feat. I mean, this place is tight. There's a lot of trailers here. There's also a lot of bobtails. Like, people just need to go drive their trucks or something. It's like, I don't know if everybody went to La Boca Chica or something for the winter, but what do you think, Missy? Anyway, so B and I are hanging out. B ran around a little bit, and so I wanted to just kind of talk about something that's it's almost like a follow-up to something I did. I talked about, okay, you got your CDL, about going to a company with training and stuff. But the other thing that kind of struck me recently is I was reading an article about CDL schools. And, you know, I did mention in the earlier video about, you know, what you don't learn in the process of getting your CDL. But here's the other thing that I noticed, and I think we were in, I want to say we were, Paul and I were out in Southern California or maybe Arizona when I saw this. But there was a CDL school that we went by, it might have been in Phoenix, and all their trucks were like, they were day cabs with single drive axles, and they were towing pups around. Now, if you're a company that's, you know, like teaching people to drive CDLs, that's great because pups are cheaper to buy, day cabs are cheaper to buy, especially in the used market, right? But that would be, you know, the functional equivalent of learning to fly, like, I don't know, like an Embraer 90, a small, like, regional jet at flight school, and then going to work for an airline, and them saying, oh, here's the keys to a 747. And I'm kind of like backing into this, but basically you get a CDL backing up a pup with a day cab, and then you take a job at an OTR company because a lot of the local companies still want like a year or 2 years of experience, and you take a job either at an LTL carrier where you're going to be hauling doubles, or depending on the state, triples, or you might haul a van, but it's going to be a 53 footer, and or you go to a starter company like, let's say, Prime, that doesn't have a training program, and they say, here's the keys to this, you know, truck that has tandem drives, has a sleeper, is significantly longer than a day cab, and handles differently. And oh, by the way, instead of having a 28-foot trailer, you have a 53-foot trailer. That is a recipe for disaster. Because I can tell you from being a jockey, backing up pups is a whole different evolution than backing up a van. And,
just for lots of reasons, right? There are lots of different considerations, etc. And so it's important to get trained. Nobody that drives a pup has to balance a load, right? No tandems on pups slide. There's a million other things that you're just not going to know. And learning it on the fly it's just a really quick way to jeopardize that CDL that you just paid a bunch of money for. Can you imagine you go to work for some company that hauls dry van and you get a load of beer? And I mentioned this in the video with Paul, right? It took Paul like 5 or 6 tries to balance out the truck, balance the tandems and the drives, when we picked up at Anheuser-Busch down in Cartersville, Georgia. Can you imagine going to get a beer load and not knowing how to balance things out, or not knowing what to do, with any number of things, not how to properly secure the load? All those things matter, and all those things are things that you can get in trouble for if you don't do it right. And so if you're deciding to come into this industry and you're not going to a company that pays for your training or has their own CDL training program like so many of the big carriers do, and you're like, oh, I'm just gonna get this on my own and then I'm just gonna go to work for a company, you're asking to lose that CDL almost as fast as you got it, or maybe faster. And when you look at like retention and success, a lot of that comes from a good training program. I'm convinced that companies that have crappy training programs or no training programs, they don't have good retention, because people feel abandoned. And when people feel abandoned, once something goes wrong and they don't feel like they're supported, they're gonna head for the hills. So if you've gotten that CDL or you're getting it, please do yourself a favor. This is not a pitch for any large carrier with a good training program or small carrier with a good training program. I mean, I think there are probably some that do it like that and don't require a lot of experience. But go to a company that has a robust training program and where you're going to get experience driving a big truck. Because I'm here to tell you that a pup, right, a 28-foot trailer, a pup with a day cab it's not driving a big truck. It's not a 747. And you're going to need to get instruction on how to drive that big truck. And it would be no different than even if an experienced driver like me said, oh yeah, I can go to flatbed, I could go to tanker, I could go to, like wide load, like extra heavy loads or wide loads, permit loads, whatever you want to call them. No, I don't know anything. Well, I know something, but that's about it. Okay. And the other thing that I also wanted to mention today is having a system and having steps that you take. Now, these can be mental, or you can actually write them down and follow them, but having a procedure. And here's why this is important. And I'm going to go back to my time jockeying. At least twice when I jockeyed, because I used to work midnight shift, and my main job was working what they called the pad. And the pad was where all of the sets of pups, all of the trailers would come in that just were brought to the terminal. And the over the road drivers, the line haul guys, they would just pull up, they'd pull it like a pull through, and they would drop that set. They'd get out, they'd crank a landing gear down, pull out from under it, and then go and get their next assignment, whether it was returning to their home terminal or taking a load somewhere, or sometimes they would just be done with their night or their day. But anyway, one of the things I had to do was split those sets apart and take the trailers to the correct spot, and also drop the dollies off in the correct spot. So you know, the first step to splitting that set should have been, and it really was once I kind of got together my procedure list, was cranking down the landing gear, because remember I was using a jockey wagon, but I would have to crank down the landing gear on the back trailer so I could then disconnect the front trailer and the dolly and take those two things with me. So there's 3 pieces in that set, 2 trailers and a dolly in the middle. And so on a couple of occasions I would just like lose, I don't know if I lost my focus or I just was not doing things in a specific order every time, and I would forget to crank down the landing gear on the back set or on the back trailer, and I pulled the dolly and the front trailer out from under it with the landing gear still up. And each time I would have to stop what I was doing and go back there and crank the thing up so it was high enough to get under. And while it's not super arduous if you're strong enough to just crank up a pup, it still is a lot of work. And you know, sometimes I'd be out there in the rain or whatever doing that. And so what I finally said is, I got to get a procedure. And I made up this little saying. I said, you've all heard the saying, shoot first, ask questions later. I would say, I made up the saying, crank first, ask questions later. And what that was to trigger me to do is always crank the landing gear down on the second trailer before I did anything else, before I bled off the air from the dolly, before I disconnected the glad hands, before I pulled the release, anything, right? I did that first. I also would do a walk around sometimes to make sure I had dummy glad hands so I could, you know, move the trailers and stuff. But that was a lesson that carried over to when I started doing over the road. And knock on wood, I've never put a trailer on the ground since I've been over the road. And the reason is, I have a procedure that I follow when I get under a trailer, and then I reverse that when I get out from under a trailer. And here's the reason it's important. Yesterday I was at a Love's in Cumberland, Maryland, and I was just fueling my reefer. I'm sitting at the pumps, pumping, you know, putting the fuel in, and this guy in a tanker, and I had seen the tank trailer sitting by itself, so I guess his truck maybe was in the shop at the Love's. So then he must have hooked up and he's driving over to the pumps. And he's from this company called Transwood, and I'm not even going to go there with Transwood. But anyway, apparently they're out of Omaha, Nebraska. So as he's pulling into the pumps, there's this incredibly loud noise, like metal on something, metal on concrete, metal on, you know, something. And so I was like, damn, what the hell did he hit? You know, I'm kind of looking around, and I realize his landing gear is down. Like, he got under the trailer, hooked it up, didn't crank the landing gear up. Now, excuse me, the funny thing is, he gets out of his truck. He hears the noise too, and so he stops, which was smart. I've actually seen people where there was like a really loud noise and they just were like, they paused for a second and just keep going. He at least stopped, sets his brakes, and gets out of his truck. But he doesn't do what I would have done, right? Because I don't like being embarrassed in public or at all. He doesn't get out and start looking around and trying to figure it out on his own. He gets out of his truck, comes around the front of his truck, because I'm on his passenger side. He comes up to me and he says, hey, and I don't want to exaggerate, but he had a really southern accent. And he's an older guy. Like, I feel like he was an experienced driver. He's like, hey, did you hear a loud noise? And I said, yeah, it's your landing gear. And he's like, ow, I forgot to check that. And I was just like, yeah, I know. But that just now, you know, nothing happened, nothing terrible occurred. He just, you know, scraped his landing gear across the concrete in between the pumps. No harm, no foul, right? But it just points up that, you know, we have to follow procedures. And so I encourage you, if you don't have like mental checklists or even written checklists, get them. You know, I will tell you, when I was training Connie, I have a certain way, that a certain sequence and a certain place where I want my glad hands and my my 7-pin. And I will tell you, I learned the hard way when I didn't, and I said, look, I don't care if you're moving the truck, if you're disconnecting, I don't care if you're moving that truck like 3 feet, hang them up properly. Because one time when I was at night, so I was a pretty new driver, and I don't know where this is very common though, you see it all the time, and I probably just saw other people doing it. So I was like, oh, it's a drop and hook, right? So I don't put them away properly. I had an International, by the way, at the time. I don't put them away properly. And I just drop my trailer, right? Throw everything on the catwalk and pull out. Well, then turned out that I was dropping at a Lowe's distribution center in the Houston area. There was no empty for me. So I just parked. And then I waited, and my DM finally said, oh, go to this Walmart distribution center and pick up an empty. And here's the trailer number. What do you think happened? Yeah, so I was fine kind of bobtailing around a Lowe's distribution center parking lot. But I wasn't fine driving across, you know, I-10 to the other side of Houston. And I got lucky, really lucky, in that a man who was because then I got to the Lowe's distribution center and my stuff was kind of jacked up. Like, I literally couldn't hook a trailer the way, the damage that I'd done to my glad hands and stuff. And luckily there was a man there who saw that I was trying to like fix it, came over, and he was basically like, yeah, let me help you. And he was there fixing trailers and had some parts and kind of bailed me out. So have a system. It'll serve you well. So anyway, thanks for tuning in. Yeah, we'll just we're gonna drop this load tonight. Hopefully get the APU fixed before we get out of Pittston, or either get it fixed here tomorrow, and then get back on the road and see if we get another load quickly or what we're gonna do, and we'll go from there. Talk to you soon. Bye.